and I'll come to the larger group. So Chris, as the supervisee, as the one bringing the case, we are recording, but I would like you to just kind of feel comfortable that if you can go wherever you want with, what you want to bring today. If there's something that comes up that you don't feel comfortable, I'm sure that I would always say we can get rid of the recording. I just wanted to take care of that. I know you've been in the course, so we're all coaches. We understand about confidentiality, but you've just met me. You don't know who I am. So I just want to reassure you that I obviously will follow that, and your story is yours. So just to think about those things to get grounded. And then I'd love to hear just a little bit that would be important for me to know as we work together about you. Maybe what are some of your strengths as a coach, and maybe if there's anything you want to highlight as a growing edge to be aware of.
Sure. Things you maybe are important to know about me. I'm a thinker, and so my pauses sometimes are long. So the silent piece is helpful for me.
Okay.
As a coach, strengths may be kind of comfort with the clients, helping the clients feel comfortable, and even new folks. Larissa, I'm so pleased to be here with you. And so I think that I feel almost instantly comfortable because I trust Damian and this group. And so I include you in that as well.
Thank you. It's an honor.
As far as a growing edge, something to keep an eye on, over contextualization, which now that I'm thinking about that, it's one of the things about my client that I'm bringing to the case today. So maybe a little over contextualization, and perhaps staying connected to me, right? So I've been working all throughout the course around really connecting more deeply to emotions, to my body, to what's happening in the moment. And so, yeah, that's something I continue to work on.
Okay, thank you. And I notice you're already kind of making some realizations about, oh yeah, it's here, it's already here. So that's great awareness. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that comfort. If at any point things do get uncomfortable, if I ask something or you don't want to go somewhere because I'm asking you to just sort of be here with me, but of course we know that there is a larger audience here, so please stay in that comfort zone for you. And as a supervisor, I'd ask you to stretch as much as possible, but don't overstretch. Can we contract for that together?
I don't really like that.
Okay, I'm not going to know what that is. You are, so I'll look to you to kind of help me calibrate that, okay?
Sure.
Awesome. And then maybe just one last question with the group. Is there anything in particular that you would want from them as they reflect back, whether, that's sort of a way of being or how they give you the information? Is there anything that you would like to contract with the larger group?
I can't think of anything offhand.
Okay. And if something comes up in the moment, I'll trust that you can kind of step in and address that. Yeah?
You bet. I promise to use way too many words doing it as well.
Okay. Perfect. Good. Thank you. So we'll get started in a minute, Chris. So if you just want to kind of, I know you said, maybe I've over contextualized. If you want to just take a minute and kind of get grounded and think about what you're going to bring. And I'll just turn to the group for a moment and ask them to think about, this is a group supervision. So we're all here learning and reflecting together. I often like to ask group what meta skill they want to bring to the supervision. And what do I mean by meta skill? It's an intention, it's a way of being. So I am going to share a really quick slide just to kind of land what does that mean. It's just an intention. So hopefully you're seeing a slide with a little girl. You know, what can you bring? You can bring playfulness, you can bring challenge, you can bring respect, collaboration. So just like I asked Chris to think about kind of what's her strength, what's her growing edge, you might want to tune in yourself, being the last session and, you know, being here to do the demo. What is it that you want to bring to the group as far as an intention, a way of being? I just invite you, if it lands, please lean into that. If it doesn't, you can let it go, not attached to it at all. Does that make sense as far as kind of a meta skill or an intention to bring to our group? Okay, this slide is not important. I just thought it might help the visual to land us there. Okay, anything from the group before we get started that they need to contract with or for? Yes, Jane. Nope.
Oh, I'm fine. I thought you wanted us to share what we're bringing.
Oh, okay. Maybe we can do that via chat. Would that be okay if you just popped your word into the chat? And in the meantime, Chris, do you have a preferred format for how we do this supervision? Is there anything that's speaking to you right now of I want everyone on screen, or I'd prefer if some of the cameras were off or on or anything like that? Or are you good to just dive in and start?
I'm good to dive in.
Okay, cool. I'm going to see when at the end if maybe we do a fishbowl, but we'll see how it feels at after we've kind of got there. So I'm going to take a deep breath because I've been kind of thinking about all these different things, and I really want to get in sync with you, Chris. So I'm going to just take a deep breath. And know that whatever is going to unfold here and show up is exactly what's needed. And with that, whenever you're ready and grounded, I'd ask you to provide a little bit of context, keeping in mind what you've already said about, you know, that sweet spot. And really, if you can let myself and the group know, what's that inquiry that you want the group to help you reflect on? What are you sitting with?
Sure. So I want to introduce to you all one of my clients, Mike, who is a new frontline manager in the organization. I'm an internal coach, and so we all belong to the same org. He's also enrolled in a leadership development program. And so we've been paired through that program for an 11-month contract. We've met, we're not quite halfway through, but we've done things like his debriefed his emotional intelligence as well as his MBTI. We're working on his, as I call them, big G goals around leadership. And he is very detail-oriented person. He wants to share a lot, which I smiled about earlier. Very data-driven. And one thing I found out through our communication so far is he does not respond well to metaphor, and I live in metaphor. And another thing I've noticed is often he hears a different question than I ask. And so sometimes when I ask a question and I get a story that's completely not what I expected, I sometimes get lost in making my own meaning rather than just listening. And so for my reflection, I'd really like to think about, how do I listen best through all of the words and stories, set my thinking and bias aside, to be a good coach and partner.
Okay, that sounds like a really valuable question to be asking yourself as a coach. Can you maybe just give us and that was, that was a nice, that felt like a nice sweet spot of info. And I'm curious if you could give us a little bit more information about what's important about that question, that inquiry that you're bringing.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, that's a really great question. I think a lot of times with the new leaders, right? The new first time coaching, first time leading folks in the organization, maybe it's a sense of duty or obligation to support them fully, meet them where they are, knowing that, they've got a lot to learn about themselves, a lot to learn about the coaching process, a lot to learn about the leadership role that they're in. And so I think maybe why I've highlighted Mike as a new leader. I have more senior leaders on my client list now. So maybe that's why he stuck out a little bit in bringing this to the conversation.
Hmm.
And again, my concern to make sure that, what I provide is getting him started in the right place.
Getting him started in the right place. Okay. I'm curious about that and what that means, but I want to make sure that we kind of involve and integrate our group. So maybe I'll just plant that as a seed, and if it comes in, or if you want to kind of reflect on it later, but what would getting him started in the right way be is something I'm super curious about. Coming to the group, we have a couple of options here, Chris. We can stay as we are and just kind of hear what first impressions are, if there's any clarification questions. Sometimes what I will do, and I'm not sure if you've done this in this class, you very well could have, is to do a fishbowl, which is you would actually go off camera, Chris, and be kind of watching and listening to the conversation that unfolds amongst us supervisors. And then you'll come back on, turn your camera on, and kind of respond to whatever is popping up for you. You don't have to respond, one by one. You might want to, but it just gives you a slightly different experience when you're not in the conversation, but more of a viewer. It's a suggestion. We don't have to go there at all. I just thought I would offer it if it feels like it's something you might want to experiment with.
I am all about experimenting, especially when we're in the learning mode. So if it's okay with the group, I'm willing to try it. Sounds like something new that I haven't seen before. Okay.
Group, can I get a kind of a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or okay? Let's play, right? Let's see what unfolds. Okay, so Chris, oh, there we go. Poof, she's gone. So please be listening and taking notes and really letting this conversation unfold for you, Chris. In the meantime, group, it's fantastic to be with you. I'll ask you again to think about if there was a meta skill that you were kind of wanting to bring in attention. This first round, I'll just keep it really open. And what are your first impressions or curiosities in regards to Chris's inquiry, which was, how do I set this new leader up, get rid of my biases, and just be the best, the best coach that I can for him? Who would like to start us off? Please, Jane.
As I was listening, I felt my body following Chris's description, leaning in, like
Mm.
trying to understand what he's saying and asking, and finding he answers with different questions. So what, physically, what I wanted to invite Chris to do is to back her chair up. So remove herself from being so close and create a more global look at what was going on with this client.
Nice. Yeah, I actually noticed that I'm kind of hunched over today as well. I'm usually a bit more leaning back, so that's interesting. Thanks for bringing that. Right. Do I pronounce your name Rekha or Rika?
Rekha.
Rekha, yes, please, Rekha.
So a couple of things came up for me. One is Chris was talking earlier about over contextualizing things. And then she was talking about how her client wants to speak a lot, wants to share a lot. And I'm wondering what is going on over there, whether there is anything, that is happening over there, which is parallel in them. Another thing I was wondering about is that since she's an internal coach, and this is an internal leadership development program, and like Chris was saying, she's normally used to coaching senior leaders, and this seems to be a first time or manager and going through this program for the first time. I was wondering what might be the relationship between them in terms of power play.
Great, thank you. What other reflections are here in the group? Cian?
I don't know what happened to me. Somehow I just appear to get lost, much like I felt Chris was losing her way too in that conversation. So the question that I don't know why it just popped up in my mind was she losing a way between intending something for the leader she was working with, or was it about what she was intending for herself?
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, the three words coming up to me is the pressure and expectation, and also responsibility of Chris and also the client. So when I'm hearing Chris, the three words is coming in and accumulated in my head: expectation, accountability, and pressure.
Thank you. And maybe I'll just add one more dish to our potluck table that Chris can, take what she wants from in a minute. For me, I think, there's a couple of things when I heard that just kind of twinged, and I don't actually make up anything about them, but the internal coach, it made me curious, and I don't know what my curiosity is. I just know that there can be some challenges, especially the leadership development program, where people are kind of assigned to coaching. They don't necessarily know how to use coaching, or they might only have limited choices of coach and client matches. So I'm wondering just kind of about that context. And the other thing that I'm sitting with is the comment about very data driven, very I would call it like consensus reality. It seemed like data information versus I see things in metaphors, and kind of that it sounded like there was a bit of a miscommunication or a mismatch. So I'm wondering about what's the common language between the coach and the client? So, Chris, hopefully you're still with us and you haven't disappeared for your coffee down at Starbucks. I see you coming back on screen. Welcome back. Maybe just like one sentence about how that was to be kind of like off screen and not part of the conversation. Any reflections on that, the actual process?
Yeah, it was no pressure. I mean, I really enjoyed kind of that omniscient view of the conversation and was able to really, not be self-conscious of taking notes or, whatever, right? Really coming off camera with lots less pressure. So I liked it.
Okay, great. And with that, what's coming up for you that you'd like to kind of share and process here together? Is there anything that sparked your interest or shifted for you?
Yeah, well, I'm calling from a little bit farther away from the camera than I was before. And so immediately, as Jane started to speak, I realized the whole time I was talking, I was up here, as CN maybe mentioned, I was editing my words. I was trying to be concise and succinct, right? And so I didn't even pay attention to what, where I was leaning or what I was doing. I got to do that off camera. And so that was such a good reminder when you mentioned meta skills to just like, such a good reminder in any conversation to really pay attention to what's happening, right? Again, something I said I was going to work on. And so, and along with that, I really was appreciated that, the getting lost comment from CN. I was getting a little bit lost in the delivery because I had a whole lot more written down here than I shared. And I was editing in the moment, right? And so the intention for Mike versus the intention for me really connected with, Larissa, what you had mentioned about us not being a good fit. I kind of felt that from the beginning. I've had the opportunity to speak with Mike about how's this working for you. You have the opportunity to interview. There's 9 possible, actually I think 11 possible coaches for them to interview and pick, make a selection kind of thing. But yeah, we are very cut from different cloth, right? And so I felt that tug of difficulty and not a great match from the beginning. And that's one of those biases that I'm trying to say, because he's like, hey, I like it. Let's keep going. I appreciate it. Let's keep going. So yeah, so all of those things are kind of getting jumbled up. I do feel responsible. I do feel responsible to provide the best support possible for this client, as I do, I think, for almost any client. Gosh, so that's all the jumbled thoughts that are happening in my head right now.
Okay. And we'll maybe come back to the group for another round. Is there anything that you're kind of sitting with now that you would like the group's help to reflect on? Is there anything you want to dig into?
The word that Huang provided around expectation, maybe a little bit about the expectation that I have of myself and how that's playing with the expectation that I have of even, I was going to next say the client, but even the program, right? Some of that internal tug that you had mentioned. Maybe that might be a helpful next step.
Okay. And would you like to stay with us or would you like to go off camera again? Totally your choice.
I'll go off again, just to continue to play with that.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, thank you. All right, so we've heard that Chris is wanting to kind of think a bit more and lean into the expectations. And I want to go back to, you know, some of the things that she said as far when we started, as far as her growing edge. And I thought I had made a note of it, but maybe I didn't. If I remember correctly, it was, you know, this being kind of being more cerebral and not tapping in as much to the emotions and the physical here and now. So I'm wondering if maybe just expectations here and now, kind of somatic, anything that comes up for us as a group that we want to reflect on. And Jane, I see you're off mute, so you're out of the gate.
Oh, when Chris was talking about it's not a good fit, I felt like it was like this. It wasn't. And sometimes I have found that maybe the right fit is that we're so different. What can I bring that we are so different and off? And so what does this feel like for Chris? Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. Rika?
Yeah, I'm now kind of picking up what CN was saying. I'm getting a little confused now, and the question about expectations that is coming in my head is, what is Chris's expectation from this group really? Is it really clear to her? Because it's not clear to me. And then I'm wondering, what might be her client's expectation from her?
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard about her side of it in terms of her expectations, but what might her client be expecting?
Thank you. Please, Cian.
You know, when Chris was presenting her case to us, she talked about her love for metaphors. And a metaphor sort of crept into my head as I was listening to her just now. And I saw that she, along with us, were on a stage. And I was wondering that if she just, for a moment, switched off the spotlight, both on herself and on the client, and just lit up the stage on which she found herself, what would she see that would be different?
Thank you. Lots of powerful reflections here.
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking about 3 circles. One circle for the client, one circle for Chris, and the rest circle is for context about the client. And I see the 3 circle moving to come up together. However, seems that a space among the 3 circles that cause a mismatching between among the 3. Then my question come to my mind is how to rearrange the 3 circles so that we can become a concentric circle.
Thank you. So I'm influenced by what everyone's kind of said here. And I'm suddenly feeling this real urge to like move into a different, like, I don't know what it is. So I'm actually going, if with permission, there's going to be a bit of noise, but I'm going to stand up and move my desk up. If that feels like anything anybody else wants to do, I invite you to do it. But for me, it just feels like the energy is stuck where I am. So I'll just do that. And in the meantime, I wanted to just lean into expectations and bias, and somehow those are coming. They're kind of connected for me. They're not connected right now. They're like they're close, and I'm trying to maybe connect them. And I'm wondering what are all the stories that are being made up here at the different levels of expectation. You know, to CN's point, you know, our group here in the here and now, what are we all making up? The organization that CN and Mike, I believe, work in, you know, the coaching industry, like all these expectations, and what are all the stories that we have and are kind of playing out is where I'm curious about. And I notice my heart is a little bit racing now as I've moved. The energy has definitely shifted, and it's a bit of a more nervous energy than it was before. It was much more grounded before. So no idea what any of that means, but I share it in hopes that maybe some of it might be useful. Chris, I know you've had a lot come at you. Where are you sitting now with all of these reflections?
Well, I'm not sitting, I'm standing as well. And took that opportunity to stand up behind the desk. That was a lot. And I want to tell you, as I went off camera, I remembered to check in with myself to see, like, so what's going on with Chris, right? And I recognized that as I was going off camera, I had a clenched jaw, right? My legs were crossed. I was very, very much kind of confined and closed. I uncrossed my legs and unclenched my jaw and felt a warmth for myself and said, you know, thinking about expectations, that I'm doing what I've been asked to do, right? I'm doing what the job calls me to do in the best way that I know. So I felt a warmth for myself, and that only increased as I heard the care with which each of you posed your questions, right? To share, now I'm lost and I'm not quite sure what that means, to share, you know, the differences, all of it, right? I really just wanted to recognize that in this forum, the ability to connect with myself and with others in the moment is astonishing to me, right? Not to take you on another tangent, Rika and CN, but that's where I immediately went to. In fact, I have hearts next to Rika's name, and as she was mentioning her comments, and you know, the picture of the taking the spotlight off was a relief almost, CN, when you said that, right? And that's how I felt being off camera at the moment, was like, yeah, so the spotlight is off a little bit. And how does that change things for me? And it makes me feel so much more aligned. It makes me feel so much more present and centered. I think I'm going to pause there for a moment, just because there is so much still with the stories and the circles. But I want to acknowledge them, but not feel like I have to bring those into the conversation.
Okay, thank you. I am conscious of our time, and I'm wondering, Chris, I kind of feel like I'd love to have one more round, but I want to be careful of our time. So I'm gonna throw something out as a suggestion. If we all just stayed on camera for a minute, and I noticed in the chat, a lot of you said the meta skill you wanted to bring was connection. So what I'm gonna ask, if everyone is okay with this, is just to kind of put our hands, whatever, on our heart and do some breathing and connect. Kind of really, I know we said let's go back, but let's kind of connect with each other, with what we've been through together, and reflecting. And if there's one last kind of word, gesture, image, whatever comes up, let's just take a minute to try and connect, and then we'll kind of round off and close. I'm seeing some shifts of a movement on the screen, so I'm assuming that means you kind of went somewhere and you're somewhere else different now. So is there anything that emerged there just with that? And no is a perfectly good answer, but anything else that emerged just with kind of trying to connect with each other and our heart?
Well, I'd like to say compassion and lightness. You seem so much lighter, Chris.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll build on that if that's okay. I felt compassion just for all of us, and like how dedicated we all are to doing good work, and how, you know, like to your point, Chris, about how everyone shared. You could just tell that there's a lot of dedication here, a lot of professionalism, and just compassion for that and all the clients that we work with. That's what came up for me, and of course yourself, right, and everyone in the group. Reka, I think you were going to add something.
Yeah, interestingly, what came up for me when you talked about connection was actually a web. And I don't know if this is I don't know if there is a spider there in the web, but there is certainly a web. And I'm wondering if all these stories and interpretations and everything that we have been spinning, so to say, has created a web. That's what came up for me.
Thanks.
You know, what screams out for me is the word trust. And it is trust in each one of us. I trust myself. I trust the group. I trust each person in the group. And I trust the process. And I trust Chris, because I can see that she's getting where she wants and when she wants to be there. So it's about trust.
Thank you.
And for me, I'm thinking that regardless of the mismatching, sometimes between the coach and the client, but always we will have the human being connection.
Nice. Any final words from you, Chris, as far as kind of what you're taking away from the reflection, the inquiry?
Yeah, I think where I originally saw challenge, I see opportunity. And and I'm excited to reconnect and just have a different view. And I'm thinking I might even stand during that next coaching conversation, right? Enjoying a different view of what I thought was a challenge I wasn't sure how to overcome.
Thank you. All right, I know we're out of time, but I just wanted to. I don't know if the camera might not be able to pick it up, but I don't get goosebumps except when I get a real like hit of something, and I just can feel from my neck down. I'm just goosebumps all over. So it was such a pleasure to work with each and every one of you, and thank you so much for bringing the case, Chris. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your guidance.
My pleasure.
Well, thanks everybody for being part of this experience. So let's take a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we are going to go to small groups to discuss what happened in the session, and then we will have a group meeting, and we're all going to hear from every group. So let's take a 5-minute break, and let's back in 5 minutes.